All right, picking back up where we left off, I'm going to modify the program we have a little bit to make it a little bit cleaner. We're going to move our validation into a single function, and then we're going to prompt the user, get their input, validate that input, and then move on only if they have provided a good number. So we're going to start by writing a function up here, and this function is going to return true or false depending on whether or not they have entered a valid number. So I will just call this function valid number, and it's going to return true or false, so the return type is a bool. So valid number is going to take a string, I'll just call that S, and the code inside here is going to be very similar to what we've done below. So I'm just going to copy this and move it up here, and then I can return my bool at the end of my function. So return valid. All right, num1 is no longer a thing inside the function, so we'll just use S. Just replacing num1 with S because S will be our string. And I think that will work. Same thing is going to happen. The for loop is going to parse all the characters in the string, and then it will return true or false based on the isDigit check. And then so down here, when I get my prompt, I'm going to do this in a do loop. Do loops always execute once, or at least once. So while valid number, send in num1, and this is going to return true if it is a valid number. If the loop is true, it's going to repeat, and we don't want that. This loop is going to repeat, and we don't want that. So I'm going to flip the logic. We're going to repeat if this is not a valid number. Remember, the exclamation point is the not operator. So let's format this guy. And that should work. If they do not enter a valid number, it's just going to prompt them again. If we want, we could put an error message in here and say, see out invalid number. And then we'll do the same thing for our second prompt. We'll just wrap it in that same do loop. Do while not valid number. This time we send in num2. And I no longer need this down here, because my function will take care of my validation for me. So just to recap, we have a function, it takes in the string, it's going to have a bool that is initially set to true. We're going to assume this is a number. We run a for loop, and we use this isDigit function to check each character in the string. Remember, a string is an array of characters, so I treat it like an array right here. If at any point it is not a digit, we're going to set valid to false. We're going to give them that error message. We're going to break out of our for loop. There's no reason to check the rest of the letters or characters. If we found one that is not a number, we're done here. And we are going to return valid. And our while loop here, if it gets that this is a valid number, then we will move on, and if not, it will repeat. So let's try that out. I've got an error here. Valid and valid2 are no longer a thing. We don't need this. So I can get rid of my if statement because all of my validation has already taken place. If I make it this far now, it is for sure a number, And I can go ahead and convert those to integers and do my division operation. So enter a dividend. We'll try doing it correctly first. 15, 5, quotient 3. So it works. What if I put in garbage, like F, invalid number? It asks for the dividend again. So let's try a question mark, semicolon. Something weird, the half symbol. And then it keeps reprompting, so it's working properly. And now I should be able to put in a correct number. It moves on to our second prompt, and it works just fine. And so that's how you want to handle your validation. We could be validating anything. It could be a zip code, a phone number, email address, things like that. The best way to handle that is to just write a function specifically for that validation process. Write your logic in there and then return true or false. Then when you're prompting for that information, you wrap it in a do loop. Give the user their prompt, you take their input, and you handle it inside the condition of the do loop by calling that function and let that function figure it out for you. And it will just reprompt until they give you valid information. Now, we still have the problem from the last video where it could be a valid number, but if our divisor is a 0, our program is going to crash. Right, so if I do 5 divided by 0, yes, it crashes. To handle that, we can use a try-catch block. And the try-catch block is kind of trivial in a case like this, but this is a good starting point for learning how the mechanics of the try-catch work. In C++, you have to write all of your own exception handling. So you will have to check specific values with if statements and throw your own errors. You can't just rely on the virtual machine to do those for you, like you can with Java. So I need to determine what needs to be checked here. I need to make sure that my divisor is not a 0. So we're going to write a try somewhere. What do we want to try? We want to try to get a good number. So I'm going to put my try block right here. We're going to try this. And then we are going to catch. And the catch block is going to handle the case that our try failed. So what are we catching? You can catch anything in C++. So it's common to just catch an integer. I'll call it X. I'm wanting to catch the case that the user has entered a 0. Now we are not catching that 0 specifically. We are just saying, if they do enter a 0, let's do whatever code I write in here. So I'm just going to write a cout statement, cannot divide by 0. And then to prevent this from happening, I'm going to continue. The continue statement restarts the loop. And we are running in this infinite loop up here, this while one. So this continue statement will restart the entire process. It will reprompt them for the dividend and the divisor. It may not be the most graceful way of handling it, but it should work. Now, how do we get the catch block to trigger? After we have validated that it is a number, we can run an if statement on this and say if num2 equals, it is a string, so I'll put it in quotes, 0, throw. And throw is what is going to trigger the catch block. We're going to throw, and we can throw any integer we want to. So I will throw a 0, but don't be confused. That has nothing to do with the 0 they entered. I will just throw an integer, and this catch block, because this catch block is made to catch integers, it will catch the 0 here. And that X will have a value of 0. We're not using it, but you could use it in here if you wanted to. So let's test this out. So enter a dividend of 15, a divisor of 5. I'm just making sure everything still works the way it's supposed to. And now let's see if it can handle a 0. This is my catch block. It says cannot divide by 0, enter dividend. I forgot a new line, but it does work. So let's put a backslash in there, test it again. Enter dividend 15, enter divisor 0, cannot divide by 0, and we start over again. And it works just fine. So at this point, my program should be invincible. I can put whatever I want in here, and my program is not going to crash. And it's also giving me the opportunity to type in something that makes sense. And at any point I do actually enter a valid number, it works just fine. Going back to the catch block here, we can catch multiple things. You don't have to catch integers. You can also throw and catch strings. So I choose to call that X. You can call it whatever you want. But if you wanted to catch a string, you could set up a catch block for strings. And then if you throw a string, technically this is a C string. So if I want to throw a string object, I have to use a string constructor there. But I could do this, and then this catch block would execute. And you can have multiple throw statements. So in some places you may want to throw integers, and in other places throw strings. You can also throw objects. And then if you want to have a catch all, you can do an ellipses down here and use that to catch anything. It will catch anything that is not handled elsewhere by a specific catch block. So this catch block will only catch integers. This one only catches strings. And this one would catch doubles or floats or objects or anything else that is thrown, because we do not have a specific catch block for those things. So that's how the try, throw, catch system works.